Oh my God. We are 1 minute late. How you guys doing? All right. Sunday. So let me make sure. All right. You know what I got to do still? I got to plug in. My external mic so this sounds better. This is all still new, kind of a work in progress. Let me plug in my Samson external microphone. I see some people have already chimed in. Hey, what's up, guys? You came in here early. You got here before I did. Good to see you. Awesome. Hang on, I might lose audio for just 1 second. Let's hear from you. Yeah, power is plugged in. All good. Yeah, it's amazing how much a live stream drains your battery. More than anything I've ever seen. It drains the battery super quick. But yeah, can you learn to talk about your system to learn a lot of songs in a short period of time? I'm glad you asked that. That is, oh, is that Eduardo? I know that guy, if it's Eduardo. So who else we got down here? Germany. How are you? Great to see everybody here. Sweden. Love it. I love it. So I think you guys could hear me. I just had to change my microphone. I had to change to an external mic. But yeah, definitely learning songs. Good. Could hear me. Make a video breaking down your Feed My Frankenstein groove. Yeah, I've been asked about that. There is somebody that did that kind of. They took the drum cam video. It's the song Feed My Frankenstein by Alice Cooper. My drum tech, Michael, took a video from behind me. I think that was at a festival in Norway. And that video, it made the rounds. More on Facebook video than YouTube. On YouTube, it had a lot of views. But Facebook, it really got a lot of attention. And there was somebody that took the video and slowed it down slow motion. And then half the screen was the drum cam. And the other half was a transcription, I think, with the bar moving in real time as I played. Maybe you look up Feed My Frankenstein lesson or transcription, something like that. You might find it. I saw it a couple of years ago. It's been a while. Glenn, watch it from Minnesota. Sounding good. All right. Great. Santa Cruz. Love it. Left hand speed and limb independence. Well, I do have my drum pad here today. I don't know if you can see my hands, but gotta get warmed up. So, well, what are we talking about with speed in the left hand? I would say it's something where you really got to work on both hands being able to play things equally. Now, are we talking French grip, German grip, or what would be considered like molar technique? Like molar technique, I always call that like getting two notes for the price of one. Like you get one on the way down, on the way up, you get the other one. Same with the left. So, and you could do three. You could do one on the way down and two on the way up. And you really should do this stuff to a metronome. I like practicing molar technique for that reason, because you're going to be using that on the hi-hat and different drums. It's a very useful technique that actually works towards being able to play grooves on the drum set. It's not just purely for speed. If you're playing AC/DC back in black, well, to me on the hi-hat, that's a kind of molar technique where the tip and the shoulder of the stick are being used, the shoulder of the stick being here, right? And then tip. It's not fast, obviously, but that's a form of molar technique. There's also going to be the French grip, which not really used so much in rock and roll. But I believe that when I'm doing the finger stuff on the stick with that grip, when I switch over to general, like, just regular conventional grip where I'm holding the stick like this and not like this, it translates because I'm able to use the fingers. And I love doing the exercise where it's basic, but it's important. Singles and doubles back and forth, like singles, doubles, singles, doubles. Singles, singles, doubles. Oh my God, it's early. I just woke up a half hour ago. Singles, doubles, singles, doubles. So anyways, I see a lot more questions coming in here. I'm missing. Who else do we have? Please, will the Hollywood Vampires come to St. Petersburg this year? Well, I hope you're talking about St. Petersburg, Florida, because St. Petersburg, Russia, we were just there. You got to let other people have a shot at getting us in their town. But you know what? That was an amazing show. I think that was the first one we did of the overseas dates last year. Amazing crowd. We have, with Hollywood Vampires, we have 7 shows right now booked in May, including a Los Angeles date, which is great. Vegas, Denver, Albuquerque, San Francisco, Scottsdale, and one down in India, which is near Palm Springs. Right now, that's it. I mean, look, if you think about it, this is not an easy thing to schedule all the time. They have to think about Alice's tour schedule, what we're doing. We have a lot of shows booked and announced this year. There's, of course, Joe Perry with the Aerosmith schedule. They have their Vegas residency, plus other things going on this year. And then, of course, Johnny with his schedule, with his shooting of movies and different things like that. To get all 3 of those lined up, not the easiest thing in the world. But what I have seen, I've seen the online news about 2 records coming from Hollywood Vampires this year. So we've got the one coming out, the new studio record, mostly original. I played on the whole thing. I'm totally stoked on this record. I can't wait for you guys to hear this. I have it. Like, if I run into you in LA somewhere, I have it in my car. So right now, that's the only way you could hear it. I could play it for you, right? But yeah, it's coming out real soon. I would think it's coming out somewhere around the time of these first few tour dates that we have. It would just make sense. I don't have an exact release date yet, but hopefully that'll change. And the other one, I guess they're talking about putting out a live DVD. We did film a show last July in Montreux, Switzerland. We played what's known as the Montreux Jazz Festival. Okay, we were not playing jazz. I promise you that. But the event, it's been around for decades. We played, and actually Deep Purple played at the same event. And this is Montreux, Switzerland, where Smoke on the Water, it's written about this. Think about the first line of the first verse. We all came down to Montreux. We came out to Montreux on the Lake Geneva shoreline. Well, that's where we were. Our hotel was right on the Lake Geneva shoreline. It was amazing that like Ian Pace and Roger Glover were hanging with us in the terrace bar of the restaurant. And they were like pointing to all these places like, yeah, we had the mobile truck over there. And, this is where this happened and that happened. They're talking about lines in the song. Our minds were blown. It was pretty cool. But anyways, getting back on the subject, yeah, there was a Vampires DVD or audio recording there. They did both. So what I heard is that it's going to be a DVD. We'll see. I guess it's okay to talk about that since I saw that on a few different websites in the Google alert. So who else do we have out there? Hey, from Nebraska. Cymbal chokes are rad. Thanks. Louisville, Kentucky. We've definitely played there with Alice, not the Vampires. I thought about to start with drums, but I'm not sure because I already started to learn guitar a couple months ago. You know, it's not impossible to do both. Why not? You can drive your parents and your neighbors crazy, not once, but twice. Twice over. How cool would that be? The new Hollywood Vampires record it's all original except for a couple exceptions. I don't want to say what it is yet. It's all a big surprise. It's all under wraps, but I'm sure there's some good guesses, at least with one or two. But yeah, mostly original, which was a lot of fun to figure out how to overall make this new record sound. I'm just really happy with it. It's all like totally natural for the drummers out there. This record, there's no samples of kicks and snares blended in with the drums. There's no beat detective, which is a program used to like artificially line things up and make it quote unquote perfect. Well, you know what? Rock and roll is not about being perfect. And we were really glad that this record was not being like fixed in any way. It's in its raw state as much as it can be. So really happy about that. Mostly originals, yeah. I saw you on YouTube play a charity gig in Hawaii with Steven Tyler. How it goes the show. Well, that's a gig that happens. It's happened the last 8 years in a row. That's how often we've done that. Alice Cooper's manager, Shep Gordon, lives in Maui. He's been there for a long time. He has this charity event every year, and it's something that benefits the Maui Food Bank, among other charities. And it's pretty amazing. We become like the house band. Coop is there, and we play some Alice songs, of course, but there's other people that live on the island that join us for this event. Steven Tyler lives on the island. I think he's been there all of the last 8 years. So we always end up playing something. Could be Sweet Emotion, could be Walk This Way, but it could be some deeper cuts. We've done Walking the Dog. We've done Seasons of Wither. I think it was at that event or maybe another NAMM event that we played that with Steven. But yeah, we've done covers with him. Weird Al joins us for this thing. He lives in Maui, Weird Al Yankovic. The Doobie Brothers guys, Pat Simmons and Michael McDonald. So we end up playing like Taking It to the Streets, What a Fool Believes, which is a Michael McDonald tune. We've played China Grove. We had Dave Draymond from Disturbed join us the last couple years at this thing. We've had some trippy guests. Jim Carrey a couple years ago. I swear, it's on YouTube. You can't lie about any of this stuff. Jim Carrey, he's got a place there in Maui. He got up and he did Schools Out with us in Alice makeup, him and Alice. And that's when Jim had the beard, long beard he was growing. So that and the Alice makeup, it was like this weird, surreal, trippy dream. I told him that. I'm like, this is too funny. This is like a weird dream that Jim Carrey is on stage singing Schools Out with Alice with the Alice makeup on. But yeah, super nice guy. We've had Mike Myers sing at this thing. We did an Austin Powers tune with him. Sammy Hagar, Richie Sambora, Sarah McLachlan, Dexter Noodles from The Offspring. The list goes on and on. It's a pretty cool event. Playing with Alice, we get to do a lot of these events where we get to back up all the different guests. So yeah, that's a really good time. Who else we got out there? Oh, Live in Paris. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks. That's a live record that's been out for, I guess, a while now. We did a set in Paris in late 2017, and that was recorded for a live record. Who else we got out there? Is it easy to learn the drums? Well, is anything worth doing easy? Not really. I mean, look, if it was easy, everybody would do it. What makes it so special is that, yeah, it's difficult, but hopefully a new student, if they're into it right away, they're going to start to like it and then love it. Nothing is going to be easy, but it's pretty rewarding once you start playing with people. You start playing with a guitar player, bass player. It all pays off, and hopefully that payoff, it comes sooner than later. How often do you use a click live? This is from Trevor. Happy to hear you're not using beat time correction in studio. Well, we were hoping that we weren't for that record, and that seems to be the general consensus with the whole band. They were cool with that. So, look, there's going to be times where there's a producer that records you for a record, and they're going to want to do those things with samples, blending samples in and maybe trying to get things lined up perfectly. You listen to modern rock radio, that's like every record nowadays for a long time now. It just sounds sometimes like on modern rock radio, they're using the same drum sounds, the same samples, which makes it have too much of a samey vibe from song to song. It's just time for a change, I think, with all that. But do I use a click live? With Alice, a click track, what he's talking about for the non-drummers, that is a metronome that's going to be heard in my in-ear monitors. And drummers usually will use that if the band is running what would be known as backing tracks, live tracks, maybe extra percussion. Maybe you hear keyboards, but there's no keyboardist on stage. Well, the keyboards are on track. Maybe there's some background vocals. Maybe there's some extra guitar. Is it cheating? Well, if it starts to get to be too much stuff on the backing tracks, maybe it's getting close to that. I don't know. It can be a very controversial thing to talk about this stuff in public interviews. But you know what? I don't care. I'm telling you guys the real deal. That's why I'm doing this live stream, to let you guys know about the real deal of what's going on with a lot of things behind the scenes. So a click track for me, I do, but we don't do any backing tracks with Alice. Everybody is singing for real. Think about it. Chuck, Tommy, Ryan, they all sing lead in their own thing. So we've got strong background vocals. Nita sings a little bit of background vocals. The harmonies are great. So I use a click on certain songs just because it really, to me, it makes it really groove well. Some songs work well with it. Others don't. So I don't do certain songs to a click track like No More Mr. Nice Guy, School's Out, Under My Wheels, Poison. Those I do not do with a click. They don't need to be the same exact BPM throughout the whole song. They need to ebb and flow a little bit. And you figure it out as you go. Some of them I'll use a click track just to start the song, to count it in on the hi-hat, but then it gets turned off immediately. My drum tech, Michael, turns it off, or maybe turns it off when the first verse comes in. And we figure that out as we go. And it's a very useful thing, I think, live. So, and songs that do work with a click track would be like Feed My Frankenstein. I think that's 107 BPM live. I'm 18. That one actually works well live. It keeps it nice and laid back. If that one gets too fast, I think it kind of loses its power in a way. $1 Billion Babies, that one works well with a click. I think that's 182 or 183 BPM. But yeah, this is stuff that I've been doing for years. And if a new song is introduced into the set, well, maybe it's a song that can be played with a metronome. I'll try it in rehearsal. And I'll, of course, get the band's opinion on the tempo. And maybe after we play a show, someone says, well, maybe it still needs to be a little faster. You get in front of an audience, people's adrenaline is up, and you have to make adjustments. It's all a work in progress. If you didn't play for Alice Cooper, who would your dream band artist be to play for? Wow. Good question. I mean, look, I've been able to play. I'm so fortunate. I've been able to play with a lot of people that have been that sort of dream artists, whether it's them joining us at some gig or something like that. Of course, playing Aerosmith songs with Steven Tyler and Joe Perry and Brad Whitford one time. That's pretty amazing. I mean, that's 3/5 of Aerosmith. That's been pretty cool. That was some kind of small dream realized in a way. Playing with Sammy Hagar. I did a set with Sammy at one of our charity shows at the Christmas Pudding. That's Alice's charity benefit. That's in December always. And that was cool. A 6-song set with Sammy, 0 rehearsal. So this kind of dovetails with what I want to talk about today, with learning songs quickly. There was no time to rehearse. He was flying in like day of. I think we got in the day before. There was just no way to rehearse. Sammy had his guitar player, Vic Johnson, great player. You might know him from like the Bus Boys, which is the band in the movie 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy. They're in that movie. So that guitar player is now Sammy Hagar's guitar player for about 20 years, give or take. So, yeah, there have been a lot of those dreams realized. I always figured Jeff Beck would be a great guy to play with. I've listened to so many of his records. He's always had such great bands over the years, and he keeps reinventing himself. He challenges his sidemen musicians to rise above and make the overall band sound better and better and better. He's definitely a guy I could see as a kind of dream gig. Thanks for that question. How is it filling in for Tommy Lee on the final crew tour? That definitely comes up a lot. Someone asked me about that just last night. I was on a gig last night where I had a bunch of songs I had to learn, by the way. I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, that was amazing. That was like kind of a small dream come true. I was a fan of Motley Crue. I started seeing them in concert on their Dr. Feelgood tour. And I was in a band. Check this out. I was in a band in high school with my best friends. They're my best friends to this day. We would play backyard parties, and we would play at least a couple of Motley Crue songs. I remember doing Wild Side and Smoking in the Boys Room, which is, of course, a cover tune that Motley Crue did, a cover tune of the band Brownsville Station. But we knew it as a Motley Crue song, you know? So we'd play these songs. We'd play some originals, some other covers. But then cut to 2015 when I got called to do that on the first day. It was in Buffalo, New York. I'm texting one of my best friends, the bass player from that band. I'm texting him going, dude, you're not going to believe what's happening tonight. And I couldn't say anything yet, but yeah, that was a very cool part of that whole thing, was being able to tell my buddies back home about it. So yeah, it was great. And let me tell you, everybody in Motley Crue, Tommy, Vince, Nikki, Mick, they were all really just the coolest about the whole thing. They've had this happen before where they had to get some kind of last minute sub for Tommy, like my buddy Will Hunt had done it maybe most recently. And they were nothing but cool about it. Tommy was able to speak to me in my in-ear monitors during the show to cue me anyway, in a way, but I didn't want to rely on that. I had the cheat sheets. Again, this dovetails with what I want to talk about today, learning songs. But like, I didn't want to assume anything, like they were doing the final bow up front after Kickstart My Heart. I didn't want to just say, oh, I'm going to go up there and bow with them. No, I stayed back behind the drums, and Vince did the like, come on, get up here, man. And they wanted me to bow with them every night. I did 5 shows, and Tommy was nothing but cool. He would hold my arm up like, oh, champion right here, this guy. I thought, wow, there's many ways to handle this. And I thought he handled it amazing. I've been in the same position he's been in, where I had the injury and I had to get somebody to sub for me. I know the feeling of watching another drummer play your gig. It's weird. It's definitely strange. But yeah, it was a great experience. I just wanted to do my best Tommy Lee impression on the drums. I didn't want to do my own thing with it. This is what's important. You can't look at a gig like that where you're subbing last minute and say, oh, well, that drummer played it that way, but I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to put my own stamp on things. No, you cannot look at it like that. If you're on a gig for several weeks, you know, maybe it's okay to start doing some things differently. I don't know. It depends on the gig. You have to use your judgment. I always say when you're subbing in a situation like that, and I have done this a few times, when you're doing that, the best compliment you can receive from the band is that they forget you're there. They forget because it sounds like they're always used to hearing it. And they turn around and they go, oh, yeah, we have a sub. That's the best compliment you can get. I did this. I've talked about it before. I think I talked about it last week. Playing with Vasco Rossi in Italy, Italy's biggest rock star. I got called last minute to sub for him. This was in 2010. And I stayed up 2 days straight learning the set. And that's what the guitar player said, Steph Burns, who was an Alice Cooper alumni. He played with Alice in the mid-late 90s. But my job was to do my best impression of the drummer that they had that I was subbing for. That's Matt Logg, a great, great LA session drummer. And that was me receiving that compliment and thinking, oh, wow, that's the way I got to approach this. Like, they have to forget I'm there. So, yeah, good question. And then who else do we have? Vic Chalfant, what's up? So how do you memorize the drum parts for all the different songs that you play? It seems like you can play anything. Well, I appreciate that. I don't know about anything, but when you're getting into the world of music, you want to be a musician. Look, the more styles of music that you appreciate, the more styles of music that you like and love, the more opportunities there are for being a working player. I can't make somebody like a style of music, but I'll tell this to a lot of students. I used to teach at Musicians Institute years ago. And so there'd be students there doing the live playing workshops, the LPWs they're called. And there would be a classic rock one, there'd be an R&B LPW, there would be modern rock, there'd be country, all the different styles. And I would tell students, go to the ones that don't feel comfortable for you. Go to the workshops that are outside of your comfort zone. Play some music that you don't generally like. You know what might happen? You may learn a song, perform it, and then you start liking it. I'm telling you, there have been certain songs I haven't been big fans of, but then I've had to learn the song. I'm like, you know what? I like this song now. I get it. I get it more now that I'm performing it. And I see the crowd reaction and the parts I had to learn. It makes sense. But how do I learn and memorize parts? Well, sometimes I do. Let me grab a chart here. Sometimes I'm memorizing things, but not necessarily. Let me find, this is from last night. Let me find a good example of this. This is what I want to talk about today. I'll just hold this up. This is a song that we did last night. I don't know how the light is in here. We played Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams. And that's what I do to learn songs. Now, this particular chart, there's a reason it's so detailed. But one of the reasons is that there are very specific kick snare patterns in the verse, the pre-chorus, the chorus. That's a very detailed chart where I didn't necessarily memorize the kick snare patterns. I had them written down. I read music. It's not that difficult to learn to read music if you haven't started yet. Now, there's another song that we did last night. It's this song right here, Roadhouse Blues by The Doors. So, seems like an easy song, but it can be tricky. You got to make sure that the whole band is on the same page as far as where the changes are going to happen in a song like Roadhouse Blues. And notice I did not write out much of any kick snare patterns. It's a shuffle where the kick is on the quarter note. It's just a boom, 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 boom. And then the hand's doing like a Texas shuffle, kind of like something like this. The kick is or it could have been something where the right hand is just so the song itself is not complicated, but what I want to know when I'm playing this is how many bars until a verse starts, right? And then look, I wrote out some lyrics. This is the song, I woke up this morning and I got myself a beer, for those of you that are Jim Morrison and Doors fans, right? And I wrote down the word Passion Lady. That's the lyric that Jim starts singing. I write that to make sure I'm in the right place. And then there's the line, Save Our City. What did I write there? I wrote Save City. And then I wrote beer right here. That's the line. I woke up this morning and I got myself a beer. That's towards the end of that verse. There's 8 bars. Once that line starts, then there's that extra 4 bars right here. And then that final chorus, let it roll, baby, roll. Right? And there's the triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, bump, 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 bop. The end of the song, right? So here's what I'm thinking. This is what I want to do. Like what I'm doing right now, showing you charts that I've written out. I'm thinking about doing, and tell me what you think. I'm thinking about doing a video series, maybe a mini series, where I sit with a song and I chart it out in real time and show you why and how I do this, my thought process behind it, counting the number of bars, talking about the potential train wrecks that can happen in songs where you have to watch out for certain things, writing out kick snare patterns. I filmed one the other day just to see what it looked like. I had the camera over the music paper, the manuscript paper. And it wouldn't be me playing anything. It would be me talking through the process of charting this out. So what do you guys think about this? I'm just curious. I know I'm missing some questions here. but I'm just looking for feedback. If I miss your question, you can always ask it again. But that's an awesome idea about the charts. Yeah. Okay. Please do that kind of video. Okay. Oh, thanks. Spent time learning Feed My Frankenstein from a drum cam. I appreciate that, Ryan. Very cool. Hey, Jan Uvina is here. As an Alice Cooper alumni, I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything you're telling people. This is awesome, and you're so honest and truthful. I'm relating to everything you're saying. Guys, Jan Uvina is here. Check this out. He did play with Alice, late 70s, early 80s, right, Jan? We met last June, June. I think it was May, when we played in, I believe it was Connecticut. It was one of the Hollywood Vampires warm-up shows before we went to Europe. I've done 2 gigs where Jan was a previous drummer. Can anyone tell me? This is like quiz time all of a sudden. I wasn't planning on doing this. Can anybody name the other gig that I've played where Jan was a previous drummer on? Your prize is that you get to be right in front of everybody. I'm not offering cash or anything, but getting back to what we were talking about, the idea of the video is great. Yeah, drum cliff notes. In a way, yeah, it's shorthand. I am not okay, let me put it this way. When I'm talking about charting out songs, some people might think you're transcribing every note. No way, not even close. It's a roadmap. It's a cheat sheet. We call it that a lot. And I have it on a music stand to my left. Most people in the audience, they don't even see it. When you're a guitar player, it would look weird to have a music stand in front of you. Some people, what they do now is they have their iPads up there. Guitar players do that for chord changes. That's fine. And that's a lot more inconspicuous than some big music stand. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's a good way to put it. Cliff notes. Charting would be a great idea. Yeah, and it's some things are going to have more written musical notation than others, like that Roadhouse Blues chart. Obviously, that didn't have a lot of kicks and snares written out. It's a general shuffle pattern. I would play along to the song to figure out exactly what kind of shuffle. There's so many variations. Your Texas shuffle or a more straight rock shuffle with quarter notes on the kick. It really depends. What inspired me to become a professional drummer? Drums were just cool. They were just this thing that spoke to me. I talked on this last week about how Rush and Zeppelin are what inspired me to start. Did I want to do that right away, be a professional? I don't know. But eventually I figured it out. Yeah, this is absolutely what I want to do. I got into high school marching band, orchestra, jazz band. I would even play on the musical plays in school. And so at an early age, I guess I was doing a lot of different things and I didn't even realize it, which speaks to the idea that music in school is an important thing. Not just because you want to maybe be a pro player, but it helps you grow as a person. You're collaborating with people, a marching band, an orchestra. It's what do they call that? A team building exercise, right? Well, we were doing that and we didn't even know it back then. Hey, Robert James, you got it right. Alcatraz is the band. That's so right. Yeah, so Jan Uvina was the drummer in the band Alcatraz. They were on MTV back in the day. I remember myself seeing the video for the song called God Bless Video. The singer was Graham Bonnet, and this is a band, I believe this was Yngwie Malmsteen's first kind of big gig. He was in a band before that called Steeler, but I don't know if they ever got on MTV, but Alcatraz definitely did. Yngwie Malmsteen on guitar, and then he left, and then they got a guy who is no slouch at all. They got Steve Vai on guitar. This is who Steve Vai was playing with before the David Lee Roth gig. And then the vocalist was Graham Bonnet, who is just the nicest guy. We played under the name Alcatraz, but Graham Bonnet, you might also know his name from the band Rainbow. I believe, I'm not always sure of the timeline of this, but I think Graham replaced Ronnie James Dio in the band Rainbow. Their big hit with Graham was Since You've Been Gone. Not the Kelly Clarkson Since You've Been Gone, but Rainbow's version of that. And we played under the name Alcatraz. This is around, let's see, I want to say 2003, I started doing this a little bit. In 2007, I remember we went to Japan. We did a tour. It was Graham Bonnet's Alcatraz, and it was Joe Lynn Turner. And they called it Versus. That's how they do it in Japan. It was Graham Bonnet versus Joe Lynn Turner. But great time. Really cool tour. And both these guys were singers in Rainbow, by the way. So that's what made it extra special. And it was Graham Bonnet's Alcatraz, but we would play stuff from Rainbow that Graham did. And we would even play some music from MSG, the Michael Schenker group, which Graham was a singer on one record. And I think we even did a little bit of Impellitteri. I saw someone else mention Impellitteri in there. Graham was in that band. They did a record around 88, and that did get on MTV, Stand in Line, where they did a cover of Since You've Been Gone. And then a record I did with Graham in Impellitteri came out in 2002 or 3. I remember recording it in 2001. So 2002 it came out. And that was a record called System X. Chris Impellitteri, great, amazing, shredding guitar player. He's always had singers in his band. It's not instrumental. And that was a fun time doing that gig, doing that record. Yeah, that's right, Jan. Robert got the answer. Too cool. How is it to play with both feet and both hands? Multitasking on a high level. But in the beginning, okay. Well, like anything, it takes practice. You start very basically. I think I talked last week about the Ted Reed book, Syncopation. That's a drum book when you're just getting into reading. I think that's ideal for any beginning reading student, but there's advanced things you can do with the book. But what it has in that book, it's got quarter notes on the bass drum for almost every reading exercise. It starts you off with limb independence right away. So you're reading mixed to eighth notes while keeping this boom, 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 a quarter note on the bass drum. So you start from there and you build on that. You hopefully have a good teacher that will show you things in the proper order. That can be tough to do sometimes. There's certain people that learn certain patterns quicker than others, and you have to figure out which way to go as a teacher. It's not always the easiest thing. Teaching a beginner can be difficult. You don't want them to hit any walls where they feel like they're not going to get past where they're currently at. So good question. Let's see. Glenn, can you talk a bit about how was the gig with Impellitteri? Well, that gig, I think that technically was my first real tour. It wasn't my first gig. My first real gig was Tony McAlpine, another shredding guitar player, and he does mostly instrumental records. That's what he's done. The guitar players that are like the aficionados of all the shred stuff, they know Tony McAlpine. They know Chris Impellitteri. That was like a very prestigious gig to get, especially at the time. It was my first thing. I was 21 when I landed that gig, something Greg Bissonette had recommended me for. We did a record, but we didn't do any touring. It was the opposite. We did a cool instrumental record, still one of my favorite things I've done to this day. And we did a few live things. There were some Randy Rhoads tribute benefits back then. And there was a couple of NAMM show performances we did. But then my second gig, I think, was Impellitteri. And that was something where I thought, oh, my God, shred guitar again. By this time, the 90s were well underway. Grunge seemed like it really had changed the whole landscape of modern music. But I saw Chris was doing really well overseas in Japan. It wasn't about the States necessarily. And this was true for a lot of bands that were doing well in America. And then all of a sudden, it's like grunge came out and just wiped the slate clean. I never saw something change so fast. Like that page turned quickly. And so I saw Chris was doing well in Japan. I went to jam with him. It worked out well. And we ended up going to Japan. That was in February of 95, I think it was. That was my second time in Japan. I had gone there before that, the year before, with Musicians Institute, with MI. Not really a tour. So I think the Impellitteri thing was my first real touring gig, which was about 2 weeks. And in Japan, they've got the bullet trains and the things that just take you from one city to another like that. And everybody is doing everything for you, pointing you which direction you got to go. So it's a tour, but it's not like any other. When you tour in the States, you're in a van, an RV, a bus. That's a real tour, I think. doing it in Japan, you don't really do the bus thing over there. They handle things a little different, but it's a great experience. And I did a few records with Chris. The first one I did with him was the one that I believe it came out in 2001, and I'm blanking on the name of that all of a sudden. Rob Rock is on vocals, and then there was one with Graham Bonnet, System X, and then there was another one or two after that. Yeah, there was one with Curtis Skelton singing lead. That was a singer that I had found for Chris. I knew Curtis. He was a student at Musicians Institute, a vocal student. Always sounded great. And then he was in a band called Speak No Evil. They had a deal on Universal Records. I saw them play locally. It was a band that had a deal, but it didn't really grow into a big touring act. This is what happens. A lot of bands that get record deals, they don't blow up and become big. Maybe most artists that get major label deals, they don't become something huge. Getting that label deal is just another hill you got to climb after getting the deal. So I was in a band on Warner Brothers. We didn't have huge success. We built up a fan base that still is there to this day, but it didn't happen where we made a ton of dough for the label. That's what it's all about. They want to make that good return on that investment. But anyways, Curtis was in a band. I remember how great he sounded in the band. And when Chris needed a new singer for one record where we didn't have Rob Rock, I remembered Curtis. And I got a hold of him. I called him up. Simple as that. One phone call. And he did a record and one tour of Japan with us in 2004, I believe. So, and now Chris has John Deddy on drums. Or he did have him for the last record. John's amazing. He's played in Slayer and Anthrax, subbed in those bands. He's a good buddy. Amazing, amazing metal drummer. And now I think Chris has the guy that was playing in Yngwie for a good while, who lives in Florida. I think I saw a picture with all of them together. Toured 2 shows with Yngwie's old, yeah, Patrick Johansson. That's what I'm talking about, actually. I think Patrick is playing with him now. Yeah, good buddy. He's a good guy. Came to see us in Florida when we played there with Alice last time. Which drummers play on Alice 1976? Boy, that could be, I could have the name wrong, and somebody may correct me out there. It could be Alan Schwartzberg. Is that his name? I remember speaking with Steve Hunter about this, guitar player that was in the Alice band with me back in 2011. He played on the Alice stuff back in the 70s. He's got tons of stories. I believe he was talking about this drummer, Alan, or it could have been Whitey Glenn, who's on a lot of Welcome to My Nightmare. There's a lot of players involved. 50 years of a career. There's a lot of people that have toured and played with Alice. Let's see. Saw Alice Cooper in a small town in the very north of Germany in 2017. And we've done a lot of those cities. It's great. You're such an amazing drummer. Thank you so much. After I saw you, I started learning drums. Really? Well, I'm glad to inspire someone to start playing drums. That's amazing. Our buddy Brandon Koo is here. What's up? How you doing? Brandon is the top rock drummer in Singapore. A lot of videos of him playing a lot of cool gigs over there with like pretty eclectic set lists. I like what I've seen, the song selection. So Brandon, great guy. Glad to see you here. What is it, like 4 in the morning in Singapore right now? Comments about Mike Mangini's performance on the new Dream Theater album. I haven't heard it yet. Is that out? I'm sure it's phenomenal. Mike is a guy that as soon as people started hearing him back in the day, he was the next drummer in Extreme after Paul Geary had left. Paul is a big manager now. He's half manager of Hollywood Vampires, manages Joe Perry. So it's cool when Paul is out on tour. It's like 2 drum guys hanging out, talking shop. But Mangini came in after that, another Boston guy, and was just blowing people away on tour. So there were definitely good things in store for him. It makes a lot of sense that he's playing with Dream Theater now. So I'm looking forward to hearing that new record that he's on. Hey, Joey Prince, what's up? We got some good buddies on the feed today. You had a tour in Russia last summer. That was awesome. Thanks so much. Are you planning to come to Russia again? I hope. I didn't see anything for this year, but you never know for next year. Hey, Mike Beeston, how you doing? Donati, Miniman, Lang, and yourself. Oh, you're too kind. Those guys are pretty much on another planet. First time I saw every one of those guys play, it was like, whoa, these guys have some extreme, insane independence going on. included that hand technique, foot technique. What do you think is most important out of all the three? Hand, foot, and four-way limb independence. Well, you got to think about what we're doing here as drummers. And I appreciate that question, Mike. Thank you. What are we doing here? Are we just playing drums or are we making music? You need limb independence. That is super important. And you need to work on hand and foot technique, of course. I was just talking a little bit about the different grips and molar technique, French grip, German, American grip. They all are going towards the purpose of playing music. I'm not going to listen to a recording and think like, oh, wow, this guy has great hand technique. You can't tell that by listening to something or their foot technique. You can tell how they play a song. And you can work on independence. You can work on quintuplets with your right hand, quarter note triplets with your left, eighth notes with your right. You could do that. But after a while, how much of it becomes too much of an exercise and how much of it goes towards playing music? I think I got a lot more into the limb independence when I started getting more into Latin patterns on the drum set, studying with Chuck Silverman, who was great. We lost Chuck a couple years ago, unfortunately. He's one of my mentors. And learning to play the parts of a mambo and playing the shaker part on the hi-hat and playing the bass drum part, doing the cross stick part, that was limb independence, right? Playing things on top of a samba, that was limb independence. And it teaches you a lot. Or Terry Bozzio doing his ostinatos, which is a cool musical way of playing a drum solo where 2 or 3 limbs keep a constant rhythm, and then the other 1 or 2 limbs, they solo over that. And it's a cool way to play a solo. Max Roach started it, but Bozzio took it in this whole other direction. I learned limb independence, I think, more off of things like that, the musical examples. And, of course, I mentioned syncopation earlier, the Ted Reed book. You got to think about this in terms of you being a working player. How is this going to make me a better musician, not just drummer? So it's all important. There's so much to work on out there. It's hard to figure out what, because you can listen to music, you can practice, you can work on your chops, your groove. It's sometimes nothing beats getting in with a band and learning songs. You're going to learn a lot off of having to learn tunes. With all the drumming you do you ever take days off so you avoid carpal tunnel? Yeah, sure, I take days off. Absolutely. I'm not able to get to the kit every day. And that's not a bad thing. Sometimes you could be playing so much, you take a couple of days or even a few days off, and you come back and you're fresh. I never had the problems of carpal tunnel. I never had the wrist problems. My problems have all been like upper back and neck, which is just something that happens. You're drumming. It's very athletic, especially playing in a hard rock kind of gig, doing 100 shows a year, give or take. It's going to have its wear and tear on the body take place. So it's important to get to the gym, stay in shape, not let the show be my only workout for the day. So yeah, taking days off, nothing wrong with that. Brandon Koo is chiming in. Yeah, Alan Schwartzberg was Alice's drummer from 74 to 79. There we go. Yeah, thanks for that. There was possibly other studio people involved, but Alan could have been the guy that was playing live with him at one point. This is something I'd have to ask Coop. He remembers everybody, which is great. Of all the people he's had in his career, it's amazing that he kind of has them all cataloged up here. I'll have to ask him about Alan. What techniques are you working on currently? What are your current practice goals? What have I been working on? I've been messing around a lot with my left foot on hi-hat and the left double pedal at the same time. I did an article on that for Drum Magazine recently, and I did a video to go along with the article. I've been doing that. It kind of can make for some interesting ideas based on patterns you already know. Hand-foot combinations where you're playing maybe right, left, and then right, left with the feet. Or what I do, I'm weird. I do right, left with the hands and then left, right with the feet. For the quads, people would call them. Digga-digga-digga-digga-da, 2 and 2, 2 up and 2 down. But if you keep your left foot on both pedals and you play that hi-hat on certain notes, you get an open hi-hat while you have a double bass pattern going on. There's actually a lot of combinations and possibilities that come out of that. Things that I've been messing around with that I kind of stumble on by accident. That's one thing I've been working on. I've been kind of in a phase where I haven't been practicing my own stuff too much. I've been practicing for other gigs and things like that. Like if I have a gig, like last night, there was a list of 24 or 25 songs. We did rehearse. We had one rehearsal. But what I wanted to do for certain songs, I'd make my cheat sheet. And then certain songs, it's like, okay, I made the cheat sheet, but now I actually want to play this song while looking at the cheat sheet. In a way, it's like me rehearsing by myself, a one-man rehearsal in a way. So that's what I've been practicing, is things like that. I put the chart on the music stand, which is to my left, right next to the hi-hat, and I'll put in the earbuds, put the song on, and I'll play to it while looking at the chart. And maybe I'll turn the song off and I'll play just to the chart with the song going in my mind. And that's a very valid, cool way of practicing songs that you need to learn for your gigs. You're going to become a better player every song you learn. You're going to take something away from that, no matter what it is. So last night's gig, it was cool. It was what would be known as a corporate gig in the lingo of working musicians. It was at this, it was kind of like a big bar restaurant in Santa Monica out here. Actually, sorry, it was in more like Marina Del Rey. That's where it was. And it was a guy's 60th birthday party. It was a guy named Scott Minerd. He's part owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So for Los Angeles people, they would appreciate this. Like Tommy Lasorda was there. I didn't get to meet him. I was playing, and then when I asked, where is he? He had taken off. He's 92 now. But he was there, and some other players, former Dodgers baseball players, were there. And the guy whose birthday it was, really cool guy, loves rock and roll. And so I was there to play, and we had a pretty cool band. And we had a couple of guests get up. We had Billy Morrison join us. He played in the Cult at one time, and he's played in Camp Freddy and Royal Machines now it's called. And we had Donovan Leitch come up, who sang with Camp Freddy, which is sort of a super group. They're called Royal Machines now. And they play, and they have gigs where they get all these guests joining them. And we played like Sympathy for the Devil by Rolling Stones. That was a song that Billy Morrison played with us on guitar, and Donovan sang. That is a tricky song. This is Pleased to Meet You, Hope You Guess My Name. It's that Rolling Stones song. It's tricky. I had to make a cheat sheet of that. Let me see if I could find that actually. Yeah, right here. I mean, if you want to take a screenshot of this just to see the way I charted out, and you can listen to the song and follow along looking at the chart. It's strange because whereas a verse may have 8 or 16 bars, there's an extra bar in these verses. And if you screw this up as a band, the song train wrecks. I hate train wrecks live. There's nothing worse. The chord change, the change for the chorus has to come in at the right time. Everybody has to get it. As a drummer, you have to know where that is, and you have to kind of help telegraph the change. And I'll tell you, Billy, who was sitting in, he asked me a question about the second verse. He said, do you guys do the second verse and go to the chorus after 1.5 times? I think that was the question. And I looked at my chart. I knew what he meant. The first verse is 16 bars plus that one extra, 17. But listen to the second verse on this song. It's 12 plus one extra. Why did the Stones do it this way? I don't know. It's just the lyrics and the way that Mick Jagger sang and wrote these lyrics. He had just enough to fill up 12 plus 1, 13 bars in verse number 2. And then in verse number 3, it goes back to how it was originally, 16 plus 1, 17 bars. Listen to the song and count the number of bars in the changes. You have to know this. And the guy asked me that. I said, hang on, let me get my chart. Let me check. I looked, I said, yes, we do it that way. Don't worry, we got you covered. You're not going to get screwed up when it comes into the second chorus. But this is what pro players do. We have to worry about this stuff. It is not all about crazy technique and chops. That's not what gets someone a gig most of the time. Certain gigs require a certain level of chops. But number one is you have to know how to learn a song and perform that song and be on high alert, meaning knowing where the potential problem sections can come up and pay very close attention. If a singer comes in late, early, things like that, you know? So who else do we got here? Best way to set up hi-hats? Mine sound muffled when closed. Do you hold it real tight when closed or slightly loose? You're talking about when I'm playing the hi-hats? That is the most dynamic part of the whole kit, the hi-hat. You can have extremely tight to all the way open and everything else in between. That's going to control the dynamics more than anything else for the band even. And if you're playing a verse and the hi-hat is tight, if you're getting towards that pre-chorus, that next section, you could start to open the hats a little bit. It builds tension. It's a pretty amazing instrument, if you ask me. And this wasn't invented until some point where they took what was known as the low boy. It was these two cymbals that were down low on the ground. It was called a sock cymbal or a low boy. It was two cymbals with a pedal, and it was like, 6 inches off the ground. It was just meant to have that open and closed left foot thing. But as the story goes, I think some guy dropped a stick and he picked it up and he went, hey, wait a minute. I could hit this and then close it. And so a low boy became a hi hat. And they realized that you could hit it, close it, hit it, close it. There's a lot of things you could do. So little history lesson with the drums. Somebody may know more about it than I do and chime in here. But yeah, the hi-hats, you have to be able to control the volume level and how open and closed they are. And sometimes rock drummers do not have their hi-hats tight enough for certain things. I noticed that. There's certain drummers in the pop world, the R&B world, they're used to playing with a tighter hi-hat on certain things. You got to think about that. You listen to yourself critically when you hear yourself back on recordings. Listen to how your hi-hats are. Listen to everything. Could I put up what again? This right here? Is that what you're talking about, George? Sympathy for the Devil, yeah. I'll be doing more of these where I show you how I chart these out. I'm a big Alice Cooper fan. Just wanted to say I love your drumming. Thank you so much, Daryl. Fan also of yours. Have been for a while. Oh, well, no question, but I appreciate the compliment. I don't know what to say. You made my day. Thank you so much. Really close friend of Lily, and I guess she would be really happy if you could say something kind about her, and I would show her this later if she's not watching right now. Are you from Germany, Emily? That's nice that you're friends of Lily. Lily runs the Sobelizer page on Instagram, and she finds some pretty cool pictures to post up. We have met a couple times in Germany. She's come out with her mom, her family, and I saw we have a lot of German dates this year, so I just may see you again coming up, Lily. So thanks for that, Emily. Let's see. What do we got here? You've played with, oh, this is from Brandon. You've played with so many singers. If the singer messes up, do you follow the singer or hang in there and wait for the singer to catch up? Well, what are you going to do if Steven Tyler decides to change the song in the moment? You have to defer to the singer. But usually that is the case, is the singer may wait to start a verse. They may wait to come in. That means the whole band has to be paying attention. Whatever that verse riff is, that pattern, it starts when the singer starts singing. That's how it is. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The only time when that would be a problem, Brandon, is if you're running tracks. There's certain bands that I will not name, but maybe people out there have seen it too. Bands that are running tracks live and they have a problem with a train wreck like that. Maybe a singer comes in late, early, you're running tracks. That means the backing tracks, the extra keyboards, percussion, whatever, they're not going to change. They are set in stone. The drummer's playing to a click, the backing tracks are there, and everything has to be synced up perfectly. That could be a problem. That's when you have to stick to the program, or somebody turns the tracks off. That's what's got to happen. You have to be ready as a band to play without the tracks. But some bands have so much backing tracks going on. If you turned off the tracks, you would lose more than half the sound on stage. So that could be tricky. There's situations you get put into as a drummer. I hate to say it. There's situations where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you try to adamantly stay the course and keep the structure of the song in place, well, somebody, maybe the singer, they're going to get mad and turn around and give you that look. But what do? The guitar player might agree and say, yes, we got to do that. And then the other side of the stage is people going, no, what are you doing? And it's just funny as a drummer. when something goes wrong on stage, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It always seems like it's on us. There's this look you get sometimes. Drummers know this. Something goes wrong on stage. It may have nothing to do with the drums whatsoever, but everybody looks back at the drummer with this thing on their face, this look like, save us, get us out of this. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And in that moment, you have to have the experience to try and figure out how to salvage and save the moment. It could be kind of nerve-wracking, but on any gig, that's the kind of high alert you have to be on, especially these gigs where you're in a house band and you're backing up all these different players. Maybe there's a sound check rehearsal, or you just rehearsed the day before, or maybe there's zero rehearsal. That is not uncommon. Again, cheat sheets come in handy, and looking at the live versions of how people do this. The Sammy Hagar set I played a couple years ago, that was a good example. Zero rehearsal. And we did a bunch. It was like Van Halen, Sammy Hagar solo, Montrose. We did Rock Candy. We did Pound Cake from Van Halen. Finish What You Started by Van Halen. I remember we did that. We did Mas Tequila, which is a Sammy tune, a later Sammy tune. We did There's Only One Way to Rock. Let me tell you, that song is difficult for a band to play live. There's changes that on the chorus are different every time. It's a basic rock song, but it is not that cut and dry. It's not so simple to learn. I definitely charted it out. And the big question you got to ask is, how does this artist play this today as a live act? And a band, an artist like Sammy Hagar, he's still touring and playing shows all the time. So it's like, okay, how do they do it this month? How do they do it now? How do they end it? How do they start it? Is the tempo any different from the record? And I grab the tempo off of the live version, off of YouTube. And I'll sit there with the tap tempo thing on my metronome app, and I'll try to get a rough idea of what the tempo is. And I'll at least start it. I'll have an earbud in one ear, getting the metronome off of my iPad. And I'll maybe stop it at some point. I use the iPad for the big button so I could just reach over and hit that while I'm playing. Or maybe if I have a drum tech, I'll have them turn it off. I'll just look over and give them the sign to turn off the metronome. Or I'll leave it on if it sounds like it's working. But I learn everything off the live versions. And sure enough, there's going to be differences between, you know, a song that was recorded 30-something years ago and the way an artist does it now. People get bored with playing the songs exactly the same. Things change. And you know what? When you bother to do your homework like that, they appreciate it. I will never forget. That was such a cool night. We played like Rock Candy. We played a bunch of cool songs. And I would get those looks, the looks back at me from Sammy, those looks that were like, you know, right on. Oh my God, that's great. You learned it. And his guitar player, the same thing. I saw some extra hits and embellishments that the guitar player did in like Rock Candy that I noticed that he did in more than one video. I checked, does he do that every time? That was the question. I saw him do it in another live video. I said, yeah, I'm going to notate that. It was just some triplets he did in the guitar solo. And he wasn't expecting me to play and do that unison thing with him. But I did. He looked back with that approval. There's nothing better. You did your homework. This artist that, well, for me, I was listening to him. I saw Sammy play with Van Halen on the 5150 tour. Maybe it was one of the first concerts I ever saw. I never thought I'd play with him, but I did. I've played with him now maybe 2 or 3 times. But yeah, it was just a very cool feeling to have the big nod of approval from Sammy. Apparently he told Alice afterwards, like, who is that guy? Your drummer, man. He knew everything. And that was because I took the time. I cared to know everything. So who else do we have here? Thanks for that good question, Brandon. It's very educational and fun. Thanks for, okay. No problem, Angela. My pleasure. Got to give back. Any funny stories of singer messing up and how it turned out? Well, yeah. You've got to be ready for those things. My residency gig in LA, I play at Lucky Strike every month, the last Wednesday of every month. We get a lot of guest singers up there. And again, high alert. I'm in the house band, the resident band. And we're used to people potentially having issues with the song. Are there funny stories? Yeah. I mean, just things where someone decides to extend something. I don't know if there's anything necessarily funny, but it's just like, okay, I guess we're extending this section. You have to be ready in the moment to change and say, okay, we're obviously going to play this longer than we expected. Now there's a solo. This guitarist is taking an extended solo. I remember we played at Lucky Strike a little over a month ago. We had Nuno Betancourt as our guest for the entire second set. It was a blast. Every time he joins us, he chooses this eclectic list of songs. We did Wrathchild by Iron Maiden. Great song choice. I love that drum part. And Tom Morello joined us also on that song. Who knew he was a Maiden fan? So cool. And we're playing the tune, and it was right before going into some section. I can't remember what, but there is no guitar solo in that song, really. There's a couple of 4-bar areas before it goes into a next verse where the guitar does a little bit of soloing. In one of those sections, Tom Morello started doing his thing with his style of playing a guitar solo, and Nuno just kind of gave the sign, like, just keep on this, keep vamping on this part. And it's like, okay, we're doing an extended solo section here. Cool. Just got to pay very close attention for the cue to go into the next part, which was that da 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 da, that part, if you know this Iron Maiden song. But yeah, the song ended up being probably 6 minutes long with this extended solo. You got to be ready for anything is the point there. Ivan here, outside of music, what's the best piece of life advice Coop has given you? I don't know if it's anything so much that he's told us straight out, but it goes to show you at his age, he's 71. He's not hiding that, his age. It just goes to show you that if you love what you do, keep doing it, and it will give you just more and more energy. He plays golf. He does the show. He does the meet and greet. It's to not rest on your laurels. Don't relax too much and think that you've got it made at any one point. He's always pushing to do the next thing, this next show. He's talking about that in interviews lately. He's working on designing the next show. I don't even know what it's going to look like yet. We're putting together a new show. He's always doing a recording, an appearance, something. And if you keep busy like that, you're going to stay energetic. I think that's something I've learned from him for sure, is to not rest and let things go for too long. Who is my idol? Wow, I don't know. I've played with some of my idols. I've got drum idols, that's for sure. I'm afraid almost to list any. I would leave out important ones. I would think later that I forgot to mention a certain somebody. But yeah, it's important to have that, to have people that you look up to, that you aspire to be like, especially early on when you're first starting out as a musician, whatever. Could be anything like that. What is... Let's see. I saw a question, favorite Van Halen album. That's a tough one. Again, it's like, how do you name one? I love 1984. I think that's the best drum sound. That's my favorite drum sound Alex ever got. But Diver Down is great. Fair Warning. There's too many good ones. It's one of those. But yeah, that's a band. I'm from LA. They're an LA band. Maybe that's one of the reasons that I grew up loving them so much. Very influential. Alex Van Halen is a very underrated drummer, very influential player for a lot of us. How did I chart that song out? Which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the Iron Maiden song? I might have that in here. I'd have to look for that. I love how you play Hot for Teacher, but I've never seen anyone play the intro with just feet. How did you learn that? I was talking a little bit about that last week. It's the Herta, H-E-R-T-A. The Herta pattern, which is... You have to get used to that on the hands. There is a lesson I did on the Herta. I did it for Drum Magazine, a column that I wrote for the magazine, but I also did a video lesson to go along with that. If you look that up online on YouTube, you should find that. And it's just something you have to start slow. If you can't do it slow and evenly, you're not going to be able to do it fast and evenly. Someone asked, do I like the band Volbeat? Absolutely. Yeah, that's a Danish band. And they have Rob from Anthrax also in the band now. He produced them at one point, and now he's in the band. Haven't seen them play live. I know we've been on at least one festival bill with them, but we weren't able to actually catch their set. But But yeah, the guy has got a really unique voice, right? They're a very popular band. They're on modern rock radio all the time in the States here. And they've been doing better and better. They've been around a few years as a radio act. So I'm glad to see a band have like a unique sound like that. They have their sound. And the drummer is cool. He's got some great double bass parts in the songs. It's very melodic, cool, heavy rock. Let's see. Let me scroll down a bit here. What do I consider my greatest recorded piece of work? That's another tough one. There are definitely records I'm very proud of. The first record I ever did, Tony McAlpine's Madness, I still am very proud of that record. It was something where we rehearsed for this 3 or 4 nights. It was pretty quick, and I was scared, like, oh my God, we're not rehearsing enough. I'm not going to be ready. But it gave me the confidence. We got in the studio. We were able to try a few different things. And I realized me not knowing some of the material too well was a good thing, because there were some good, genuine moments that came out of it, maybe even some good mistakes, some happy accidents that came out of it, just playing in the moment. There's a song on that record specifically. It's a song called Albert's Fat Sister. That song has Branford Marsalis on saxophone. He's a guest player on that. The song sounds like the intro to some late night talk show. It's got that up-tempo, almost big band type of feel to it. It's got a backbeat to it. It's not a big band song, but there's horn parts on it. There's trombone and there's trumpet. I believe it was Lee Thornburg, who was in Tower of Power for a good while, and a guy named Matt Finders on trombone, who was in the Tonight Show band at the time. And that was also when Branford Marsalis was in the Tonight Show band. That particular song I'm proud of a lot. There might be a YouTube clip of that, like an audio clip on YouTube. But also, I really like the record that I did with Jennifer Batten way back. And there's a couple of songs I played to off of that in drum clinics. That record was 97 it came out, and there's songs off of that I played to. The Swarm, which is a great linear groove song, and a song called Elephant Stomp. Really proud of that record. Proud of the record I did with Beautiful Creatures that came out in 2001. Just a really heavy rock record, a GNR, AC/DC kind of vibe. That I was happy to surprise people. People knew me a lot for the guitar instrumental shredding type of records at the time. I was happy to do something different and surprise people. There's a great big drum sound on it. The production is huge, and the songs are great. I just really still love that record. I can still listen to it today. It sounds fresh. And I'm super proud of the new Hollywood Vampires record. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. I really am curious to hear your thoughts. Some stuff you're going to go, whoa, I was not expecting this, in a good way. And there's some left turns, I guess you could say. Some things that, well, it's a very diverse record. There's a lot of styles covered, but it all sounds like one band. So I'm absolutely proud of that record. Looking forward to you guys getting to check it out. We can talk about it here on the live chat. What metronome app do I use? There've been a couple. There's Metro Timer. Check that one out. Just type in the word metronome into the App Store and see what you find. What I'm still trying to find, Brandon, I'm still trying to find the best drum machine app where you can actually just make patterns. When you type in drum machine, what comes up, or what I found, is a lot of people that want to make beats for songs. That's great, but I want something where you could program and put in congas and tambourines and hand claps. I haven't found an ideal one of those yet. Maybe one of you can chime in and tell me about one you've found. What do you got here, Joey? I feel like I've asked you every question I ever had to when I see you, but I notice you have your freedom to be yourself on the Alice and Vampire songs. Do you prefer that or playing the studio version? Well, within reason, right? If I'm playing the $1 Billion Babies intro, I have to play that as is. How are you going to change that? That's such a recognizable drum intro. It's as recognizable as the intro to Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll. So how do you change that? You got to use your best judgment. And if you stray too far from the song, maybe someone in the band will say something like, you know, we need this to be still a little more like the original. That hasn't happened too much, fortunately, but you got to be all ears. You got to be willing to take that direction from people in the band. You can't be stubborn about anything. But it's important to know the studio version. When I make my cheat sheets, I will write out what certain fills are. Will I do that when I actually play the song? Maybe, maybe not, but it's good to know what that transitional fill is so you can at least do something that is based on it if you don't do it exactly. But it's important to know. And when you learn the studio version, you're becoming a better musician. You're getting inside the head of the person that played drums on that track. And it kind of makes you go, oh, I see why they played it this way. Now I get it. Now that I've learned the song. It's about becoming a better musician. Big time. Hello from, oh, hey, Mike Miller's here. Mike Miller is in New Zealand. Yeah, they canceled at least one of the shows. Mike is down there. He's drum teching on the Slayer gig. And he was down there when this tragic shooting happened. I'm sure it's been pretty strange down there, but I'm sure we'll be hanging soon when you get back to LA. Nice of you to chime in like that. Hope things are going good on the tour. One person or band that you haven't played with but would love to. Well, I mentioned Jeff Beck earlier. Haven't played live with him. That would be pretty amazing just because his improvisational work within his bands have just, they've been amazing. He's had all these great drummers. He's had Vinny, Terry Bozzio, Simon Phillips, Narada Michael Walden, going way back. He had Carmine Apiece. Such great bands that he's had. And it just seems like he brings the best out of his bands, no matter who they are. So what else do we got? George is asking about 6 a.m., the band 6 a.m. That was a thing. It was a last-minute thing. This was in 2007. DJ Ashba, I had played with him in the band Beautiful Creatures, of course. I had played with him before that. He had an instrumental trio. That's how I had first started playing with DJ. And we had stayed friends after that band had ended. We kept in touch. And long story short is he had recommended me to join Beautiful Creatures when they were losing the drummer they had. And it was perfect timing. It was right before doing the record that we did back then. And when 6 a.m. was putting a live band together, this is in 07, they'd done the record. It's programming. It's great drum programming on the record. People thought it was real, and I could understand why. But they had to get a drummer, and I think that was it because the band is DJ and Nikki Sixx and James Michael, and they would do everything on the records plus the programming, so all they needed was a drummer. I think what happened back then, and I've talked about this with Will Hunt, I think they talked to him about doing the gig. And sometime around when that was going to get going, Will got the gig with Evanescence that he's still into to this day. He sounds amazing on that gig. And they called me after that. They had already known Will. He might have played a bit with the Vince Neil solo band at that point, and that was how he was in that circle of people. He couldn't do the gig. So DJ said, well, we got to call Glenn. Nikki had met me. At that point, I did one recording session for DJ and Nikki. It was some demos they were doing. They were writing for other artists. I just came down and put drums on a few songs. There was a drum set at this studio, and that was it. And a year later, I got asked about 6 a.m., and DJ told Nikki, he said something like, oh, we got to have Glenn come in here. He will come in and know these songs better than we do. What he meant was the arrangement, not the parts of what the guitar was doing and the bass. He knew I would come in having done this, make the charts. And I think I got called like a Friday for rehearsals that started on a Monday. It was a mini set with a backdrop video behind us that was synced up to what we were playing. So in rehearsal, it was a lot of technical things going on about figuring out the tech side of getting the video synced up to what we were doing. It was absolutely playing with click tracks. I think the whole band got the click track in their in-ear monitors. First time I had done a gig like that. And it worked out. That's how it happened. It was a recommendation. They didn't do too much that year. And by the time they were doing another gig, which was a few months later, I had taken an offer to do the Elliot Yamin tour. He was on American Idol back then. He had a big, big hit in 2007, 2008, song called Wait For You. And I was glad to do that gig because it was like a pop R&B thing. It was another one of those gigs where people would be surprised to see me doing it. But there was this one other 6 a.m. gig that came up that I wasn't available for. So Tony Palermo from Papa Roach did it. Sounded great on it. And then the next year there was Crew Fest where Papa Roach was on the tour. So Tony did both gigs. But I did the very first 6 a.m. gig. That was a blast. Great songs on that first record. I don't know if they intended it to be a touring thing. They had to see if it was going to go somewhere. It was about the book originally. Nikki wrote The Heroin Diaries. The music were songs inspired by the book. And in the beginning, what we did, that first gig, it was a press conference / concert promoting The Heroin Diaries. We played these songs, and then that first single, Life is Beautiful, took off. That was all over modern rock radio. It was great to hear that driving around LA, hearing that on radio. So yeah, that's kind of how that started, that gig. And who else do we have? I'm totally behind on questions. Would you consider doing some playing to demonstrate things on these streams? Would love to add. Well, I do have the drum kit behind me. Going to work on getting it muffled a little better. I watched the live stream from last time. The snare drum does need a little more muffling. Things are going to get better technically on this. I do have an external mic that I got. I think I need to get a couple of mics on the kit, but if there's a specific question, I'd be happy to jump on the drums. I'm going to have to get out of here soon. I have some private students today. Looks like it's 1:20 LA time. Let's see. How do you put together a good solo? What are we talking about? A solo for a rock and roll show, an arena crowd, a club crowd, a drum clinic, a jazz gig? There's a lot of types of drum solos that you could do. A lot of types of solos. When I've played with Alice, what I've done the last few years, there's a solo over the song Halo of Flies. That's over a bass vamp. It was more or less the same from night to night. It can evolve a little bit, but I can't afford to get into any experimental territory with the drum solo on that. I have to stick to the program. Alice is doing a costume change at that point. And I need to do things that are going to be crowd pleasing. I want to do stuff that I feel is cool, but I got to think about not getting too crazy or too weird technical. There's a visual aspect to that. I'm definitely throwing a lot of, this stuff in with the solo. Alice's manager, Shep, has actually made comments about certain solos I do. He has said things like, the drum solo, you got to dumb it down. You're losing people. I get it. I get why he's saying that. You can't get too technical, but it has to have a beginning, middle, and an end, a solo like that. I treat it like it's a song in and of itself. Drum clinics, I can afford to go longer and be more self-indulgent. The drum solo at a drum clinic, that could be 10 minutes, 12, 15. There's ostinatos in that kind of solo. There's definitely a lot of dynamics. There's things I'm working on maybe in those solos that I'm maybe playing for the first time, and then I'll discuss them in the drum clinic. And then there's the kind of solo you do on a fusion gig where you're maybe playing over a vamp. I like those kind of solos. You can create space in that case. If the bass player or bass and guitar are holding down some kind of constant riff, and then you get to do things over that. It's the opposite of what you usually do, where there's a lead guitar section and you're just playing the song and they're playing the lead over these chord changes, over this riff. Now they are keeping the constant and you get to play over the changes or the riff. I think that's one of my favorite ways to do a solo. There's a good one I did at the Baked Potato. That's the little jazz fusion club in town here. I think if you type in on YouTube, Groove drum solo, somebody put it up. I think it was Drummer World, that website. They uploaded a solo of mine from one of those gigs. And it's a perfect example of soloing over a vamp. I love that kind of solo. And you get to create space and build tension, have sort of an ending to come out of it to finish the song. It's really exciting, that I think, doing it like that. So let's see. Let me scroll down a little bit. How much of a role did Tommy Henriksen play in you bagging the Alice gig? And in that vein, how important is it to know people in this industry, to be able to get a gig of that caliber? Well, let me tell you, I probably wouldn't have met anybody in the Alice circle if I didn't know Tommy. Him and I were in a band together. I've known that guy almost 30 years. We were in a band mid-late 90s. I think I was talking about this last week. He became more of a producer-writer, still doing solo stuff, still working, producing artists, writing, and then he would get me on recording sessions. And he saw I would show up, I would have everything charted out, take direction, and we just seemed to work really well together. And he started working in the Alice Circle in Nashville. And in 2010, I talked about this last week, did a recording session for Alice. It went well enough to where Tommy was working with Bob Ezrin at the time. Bob was the overall producer of this session. And it led to the gig a year later. They were going to have Bob produce the show. Bob wanted to bring in a couple of different players. I was suggested, and then Bob wanted Tommy to be in the Alice band. And Bob wanted Steve Hunter to be in the band. And I was the one guy that Alice didn't know. And Alice said, well, this guy, Glenn, okay, I sang over his tracks that he recorded for me in the studio. He obviously gets the vibe of the music, but I need to see him. My drummer needs to be flashy. He said something like that. So Tommy showed him some YouTube of me, I guess, doing a drum solo, doing some flashy stuff. I always say that was the final 10 or 20%. The 80, 90% of it was playing the music and really showing that I could play with the right spirit in these songs. And Tommy vouched for my character. That's important. That's at least 50% of it is the hang in this business. You have to be able to do the hang. You have to have the right attitude. Someone has to vouch for you and say, this person's not crazy. They're not an alcoholic. They're not going to disappear on you. They're not going to go nuts. They are the right person for the gig. And Tommy was the guy to do that. So I owe him big time. Really, you need that person to vouch for you. You need that introduction. It's rare that someone will get a gig from a straight up cattle call. That's when there's a bunch of people lined up outside going into audition. When those happen, the person that gets the gig often is someone that knew the artist in one form or another. They may be there at the cattle call, but they somehow already knew people in the band. That's important. It's just rare that someone gets a gig sight unseen. They just come in to play a couple songs, get a call back to play again, and then boom, you're in. Does it happen? Sure, but you got to have that connection. The Elliot Yamin gig, that was the American Idol guy I played with. That was through having a connection. A good friend was in the band. I auditioned. Everybody in the band recommended one or two people, but I had the connection. I had the in already. This is where the networking comes in. It's so important. So yeah, Tommy played a very important role in me getting that gig. Tell us some memories of your collaboration with Vasco Rossi. Not a fan of him, but only curious about it. Cheers from Italy. And someone before that asked, have I ever panicked when I played live? Like, shit, what do I do when he messed up? Well, I can answer both of those almost at the same time. I mean, everybody's had those moments. When you make a mistake on stage, it's so much more magnified on stage than it is in the crowd. You sometimes see a video afterwards and you go, wow, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought in the moment, right? But like before playing that first concert with Vasco, this is Italy's biggest rock star. It's stadiums, arenas. I came into sub last minute. I stayed up two days straight doing cheat sheets, learning the set, because then I had to fly to Rome and then to Sardinia, the island, beautiful island. And yeah, it was a crazy thing because I was flying there sight unseen by the band. It was a producer in Los Angeles, an Italian guy that lived here named Saverio, that recommended me to do this. And they didn't have much time to figure this out. The whole tour was starting in a few days. They had to figure out who was going to come in and sub this gig. All the people that had done the gig previous that they had called, nobody was available. Greg Bissonette had played on Vasco's records. They had called Greg. He couldn't do it. I think he was busy with Ringo Starr. The producer said, well, I'm thinking of calling Glen Sobel. And Greg said, yeah, call Glenn. He'd be great on this gig. So thank you, Greg, right, for putting faith in me. When you recommend somebody, it's a serious thing. If I'm recommending somebody, I take that seriously. I got to know that they're going to be the right person musically and personality-wise for that gig. Like I recommended my good buddy Steve Ferlazzo to play with Richie Sambora. The bass player who was kind of acting as music director, that was Mike Bradford. You might know him from the Kid Rock gig. He was in the videos way back for the first couple of big hits Kid Rock had. He's playing now with Richie Sambora, among other things. Mike became a producer, produced Deep Purple, great guy. He called me, he said, I need a keyboard player. I said, I'll give you 3 names, Ferlazzo, and Ferlazzo. You got to get him. He will come in, he will know the parts, he will have the sounds, he'll even have the background vocals. I took it seriously, and it worked out. So when I was recommended to play with Vasco, I knew the pressure was on. And I had to come into this room filled with all these people watching, and the band is there, and people are clearly nervous. They're worried because the whole thing, the first show was in like 3 days. We had a couple of days to rehearse. They're worried. We played through the first 2 songs because I think they were connected. They were segued together. And after that, it was like, oh, we're going to be okay. It was like a mini bit of applause broke out. They saw that I did my homework. I wasn't just a guy coming in to play these songs and just do my thing. I played it how they were used to hearing it. And then it became fun. But Vasco was not there yet. And then the word came in, oh, Vasco's coming down. He's coming down to hear Glenn. He's going to check it out. And so he comes in. I've never met this guy. This is Italy's biggest rock star, you know, an icon. He's sitting there in the back of the room like this. Like, all right, let's see this American guy. Let's see what he's got. We started playing through a couple of songs. Then he started kind of going like this. And then like 10 minutes later, he's like bouncing around the room and dancing and singing. And it became fun. And there was this one point, I can't remember the name of the song. These titles were all in Italian. Although I do remember a lot of song titles. I don't remember this one. But it was this big Keith Moonish drum fill into a tempo change where it slowed down. It was like this boots, get at doos, get at diggers, get doos, digga doos, digga decka digga digga oohs, gat into a tempo change. And at that fill and change, Vasco walks up to my drums. I still haven't like been formally introduced to him, I don't think. He walks up right in front of the drums and stands there and goes like this. It's like he's saying, okay, tough guy, let's see if you got this part. And I knew this was a big deal. I had charted it out on my cheat sheet. I had, on the airplane ride there, I listened to each song twice in a row while looking at my charts, kind of visualizing myself playing it. So, you know, I played through it and he was happy. It worked out. And then we did that part at the first show in Sardinia for 40,000 people. And I had my drum cam going. I had a little camera running behind me just for myself. And he ran up on the riser and like gave me the big handshake, like, hey man, you did it. You did it. So that was a very cool moment, a cool memory of coming in last minute. And it was a good time. A lot of other great memories from that, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe a few others here. Have I thrown knives with Alice? No, I haven't. But he does that every night in the dressing room before the show. That's how he warms up. He's throwing knives, everybody. Crazy, right? Can you do one of your cool spin stick tricks? Well, this is something, if you notice, it's the cigar grip. That's what I call that. So you got to get it going like this, where it's just straight up and down. And then you have to use your index finger. For me, I want to make it, for me, turn clockwise. You'll see it as counterclockwise probably. But it's turning to my right. But it starts here. And the trick is getting a hit and then getting that spin in between. People call this backwards. I didn't even realize that I did it backwards until someone said, oh, you do that backwards. The stick goes back, back. Other people do it forwards. I can't even really do forwards that well. But the trick is getting the hit in between. And when I'm playing with that grip and doing it with the left hand as well. So, yeah, the thing I always say is you don't want to do this on the wrong gig. On the Alice gig, it's cool. But if you're playing, like if I'm doing the Richie Sambora gig, when I played with him, I wasn't doing that kind of stuff. It didn't fit on that kind of gig. So let me see. Do I know the band Dizzy Miss Lizzy? They're very good. No, I don't know that band. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Do you need rehearsal for the May one-off show? And will it be the new set? That is from Big 2 fan. Good question. We have an Alice Cooper one-off. It's a festival in Mexico City. I think it's called Domination MX, something like that. That is not going to be the new show. As far as I know, we're going down there a little bit early to rehearse, but I think we're going to be rehearsing last year's set. We haven't played that in Mexico, really. We did one festival in Monterrey in 2017, but we haven't played in Mexico City. We haven't played there ever since I've been in the band. So that'll be exciting. It's a festival that Kiss is on. I saw the lineup. It's a bunch of cool bands. Hopefully we'll get to see some of the other acts. That's what's great about playing these festivals, is a lot of times you get to watch a lot of the other acts from side stage and just meet up with friends and see people, make new friends. And it's a good time. The drummers always seem to like to hang. That's what's great about it. So you see people in the dressing room area. I'm really looking forward to that. The new show will start up for Alice. The new show starts in early July. I think our first show is like July 2nd, 3rd in Connecticut, if I'm right. So looking forward to that. I have no idea what we're doing yet. I will find out when you guys do. So I got to get out of here soon. I'm going to be teaching some private students today. And I'm glad that there's some good positive reaction to the idea of doing some of these videos of making cheat sheets. I think what I'll start doing is I'll put them up on Wednesday. So next Wednesday, the one after that, the one after that, I'll put some different ones up. I have a good idea of the first song to do this with, because it's a song that isn't a complex song in any way, and it has more or less the same kick snare pattern going throughout. You'll see what it is, but it's a good one to start on if you haven't done this. If you're a drummer that's looking to do this more often or to just get into it, period, I think this is something that could potentially help. I sent a couple of friends the private link to this video. I just wanted to see. I asked them, does this make sense? Is this something that you could follow? Do you understand what I'm doing here? And they got back and said, yeah, this is good. So I'm going to get into that and maybe some other things. This is all a work in progress. So I appreciate you guys asking the great questions today, and we'll see you next week. You know, we got a couple more people chiming in here. Just people saying thanks. Yeah. Yeah, appreciate it so much, really. And I almost didn't make it today, too. I came on the air, I think, at 12:01. I try to be on time. Got home kind of late last night, had to eat, had to wake up, get on the live stream. But we'll be here next week. So once again, thank you so much. And maybe I'll have a special guest next week. My parents' dog is around here. I was trying to get her on to be a special guest, but she's shy. She's downstairs. So thanks again. And we will see you guys next Sunday. You rock. I love that you guys ask such great questions. So we'll see you then.